So, hi everyone. I've got the afternoon lot with Viv, who will introduce herself fully when I hand over to her. But I'm really excited to be presenting with Viv because she is going to come up with all the solutions, as I mentioned, with you. And all I have to do is be miserable about all of the challenges. And before we start, though, I realised I did have a copy of my book, not to make this about me. Anyway, there's 5 slides on me and then 1 on Viv. So I realised this can be the first prize, and then the hamper can be the second prize. And I can sign it just to lower the value a little bit more. So I'm super excited to talk about a topic that I've been trying to get to the bottom of for probably the last 15 years or so, and that is why on earth do people come to work in care when there are many other choices? As I mentioned before the break, when I had a care business which had almost 10,000 staff, you know, why they didn't have to come in. There was contractually they didn't have to come in, but they did, and it wasn't because of us. We were known apparently in head office as the Death Star or Panic Palace, depending on what we were doing at the time. And it was about something else, something invisible that was making the wonderful experiences of care that many of our service users, as we used to call them back then, clients, as we probably do now, were experiencing. So next slide, please. What I want to look at is to try and unpick what is that invisible thing that makes care workers love their work. And if you perhaps hear from some care workers, they might feel that thing that they have is being taken advantage of. So my concern has been for a long time that this whole sector does not collapse because there's this invisible glue. And my fear is that we are exploiting goodwill, something that people are bringing that we're not paying them for. And that is the thing that's keeping the show on the road, and not many other things. So you can see on the screen, you know, the sort of comments people might say is that, you know, please come in, we haven't got anyone else. So this is guilt tripping. And this is, you know, a concern that we're taking advantage. And there is a term, I can't remember who termed it, but prisoners of love, of people who have that kind of calling for care, who are, you know, who feel that we are stealing, if you like, or collecting their love and using it without monetizing them or not giving them the value of it. Next slide, please. Now, you might call it goodwill, but I've done a lot of work to try and understand what's happening in the minds of care workers. And care work has a unique component. You can just flick through, Dahlia, please. So on the one hand, you might say, and this is often because this is we are termed in the sector as unskilled labour. It's face-to-face service work, so it's probably the same as hospitality or some other role where you have to be with the people that you're delivering the service to. But there's much more to it. Next one, thank you. There's also a dependency. So there are recipients of care, and where these two things overlap, people who are in need and a face-to-face delivery, something happens in the middle that's really quite wonderful. And you can move on one. Thanks. What you might term that as is a type of intimacy. There's something where there's people who are vulnerable in need, and then there's this service element, and the special sauce is really that care work is really quite intimate in terms of personal care a lot of the time, and that intimacy is really something that people who have a calling for care are going to love to do and want to help, and those that don't, we often see, are going to leave the sector very quickly. So staff turnover, if you looked at it in a year, would be clustered really early in the process. So usually the first couple of days, often people might even leave before they start, and those statistics aren't recorded. So there's something happening. Why are the people that love this job like they are? Next slide. And so I would argue that care work is not unlike any other work at all. Even the NHS, which is really a conveyor belt, and there isn't really much time, or the NHS doesn't want to spend time with people because they need them out of the door. So social care is something very, very special. And this will give us clues as to how we can sell this role to more of the people in the local community who would love to do it, but don't realise that they have all of the skills we need. And I think we are going to have to relearn this, because we've relied largely on international recruitment. And of course, that tide is going out there, and we've lost more and more UK-born workers, and we're going to have to reverse that slide. So there is an exchange. If you look on, let's say, Indeed, you would see, here's a care job, this is the hourly rate. So effectively what we're saying is it's a time for money exchange. We want to buy your time to care for somebody. But just advance one, Dahlia, please. But there's, I argue, a piece that's missing entirely out of that, which is an unpaid personal investment. And that is the care about bit. So we not only need you to do things, perform tasks to people, we want you to actually care about it, care about them. And that can create things like vicarious trauma, where care workers feel the pain of those that they care for. So actually the role creates pain and suffering in the workforce because of the type of people they are. And as providers, we inhabit a very different world. And when I was a provider, if you could, yeah, perfect, thanks, Dahlia, you already ahead of me. Then the sorts of things we were worried about as providers were compliance, as Louis has been talking about, and we saw from the poll, everyone's focused on compliance, and the financials, and process, and regulatory frameworks, and managing risk and reducing risk. These are all kind of hard things. And in fact, a lot of our training of care workers is about moving and handling and first aid and so on. But I think it misses entirely, next, just advance one, the world of care workers, what's happening in their heads. They're bringing their whole selves to work. And really, for them, it's about love and other things. There's lots going on in a care worker's head to get intrinsic rewards out of the work they're doing, and to give love. I don't know many other roles where you're expected to bring love to the role, your whole self. And many care workers, as we'll discover in a moment, have their own challenges. Why have they become the people that they are? And often they've experienced trauma themselves, which has made them emotionally mature, which has made them ideal for the role. Next slide. So I would argue, in terms of finding people, in terms of recruitment, we are selling the wrong package. So again, if you go on an internet job board, we're talking about particularly pay and benefits and extrinsic things, and we are not using the right language for the right people. Next, thank you. We are not really dealing with the intrinsic rewards of the role at all, or in fact screening people for those kind of characteristics. So next slide. So I would argue that we need to kind of understand, what are these intrinsic rewards? We'll see a different bundle of those with each individual that we recruit as a care worker or support worker. People have their own mix of what they're looking, or what needs they're looking to fulfill in themselves, what care work gives them. And the more we understand this as providers, much more valuable for us to make an offer that finds the right people, and ways of keeping their emotional cup full, and protecting this energy, which Viv's going to talk about in a minute. So I put some on the screen there, joy, love, familial bonds, that kind of thing. But yeah, next slide. Thank you. But if you look at recruitment, a world I spend a lot of my time in, obviously AI is coming into that. But if I look at a CV, which is the usual currency that we deal in, it's often not going to tell me anything that will give me any clue as to whether that person will make a great care worker or not. So it looks at things, as you can see, in qualifications, work history, and so on, and it misses, compassion, emotional intelligence. And even if I was a family care, or I was a carer of a family member, and those I think are the really good marker of someone who is going to succeed in care, as if they've had to care for a loved one, that would be the one question I would ask if I only had one question to ask at interview. They might hide that on the CV. They might think, well, I'm not going to get a job if I say I spent time caring for someone. And our challenge is trying to understand and unpick behind the CV. Even if I saw someone who had multiple jobs, Well, that doesn't mean that they're a job hopper. It means they haven't found their calling. Maybe their calling is care work. So we need to have a method and a way of finding them. And Viv's going to dive into the technology support piece. But I mean, I would give a shout out to Damien and Care Character in terms of having software that will help you understand the person you have in front of you. And I think asking clever questions around family care experience and can you give me evidence of you volunteering, or what you want to see people demonstrating that they put other people first. And that's really one of the key clues. Just advance one more. Thank you. And I just put a note at the bottom about AI. What I'm seeing now is AI generating a CV and being read by AI. And like, where's the human in that? Where's the relationship? How on earth are we going to find a future care workforce when there's actually no humans involved in any of it? Next slide, thanks. So I'm just going to finish on this. This is a simplified version of what Viv is going to talk about. So I just wanted to finish on it to kind of prime your minds. I always look at relationships. I think relationships are the most important thing in social care. And if you look at the care worker in the middle, you could just keep advancing them, Dahlia, thanks. I mapped 4 pathways. Viv's more sophisticated than me, she's got more, but I'm simple. So I was focusing on the care worker in the middle and thinking, what key relationships have we got that are going on here? And we often have a relationship with a supervisor. One more advance would be great, thanks, which is often the weakest bond. And people leave because of their boss. And my care company, we gave exit interviews, and I think like 70% of people said it was personal reasons that they left. Well, personal reasons actually meant I don't like you, the supervisor, but I don't want to say because I want to get a reference. So we know that this supervisory relationship is really often quite weak. And then what can we do to replace the energy that's being drained from that just that one connection? And then there's connections with the colleagues. In my world of domiciliary care, often you don't really have colleagues. You're working alone, but you can do something to make the team feel cohesive. And then there's the relationship, which is the strongest bond between the resident or the client or the person being supported. And that's usually the goodwill, and what's keeping this whole show on the road is that single relationship. Nothing to do with the employer. We're often just getting in the way. And then finally, there's the family or partner or the home life of the care worker themselves. And often those people don't understand why their partner is a care worker, and they will say, oh, go and work in Tesco's, it's more money. But in fact, what they're not understanding is the intrinsic rewards we looked at, the familial bond, the sense of purpose that you can get, the energy that you can get from being a care worker if you're the right kind of person. And I think what's exciting is there are many, many people out there walking past Fortnum and Mason now who have those right values, and it's up to us to reach out. And also, once we've got them, how can we support them? And I think here technology can play a really important part. I mean, CarePoint 365 is one example, is a very customizable software solution that can try and capture some of this in its HR function. And I think it's really quite exciting when we can understand more about each individual care worker and why they come to work and how can we feed that energy. But that's all from me, just kind of looking at this under the hood, if you like, of what the sorts of invisible things I think are so core to why this sector exists in the form it does, why it hasn't collapsed, and it's not to do often with the things you think it is. So I'm going to hand over to Viv now, who's going to come up with all the solutions with you. I'm going to have some more scones.
Yeah, I don't have a book. I might have an offer.
Did I mention my book?
Yeah, I mentioned your book. It's the second time you mentioned your book. It worries me a little bit that I'm competing against a man who's a seasoned author.
Keep going. This is good.
You know, wearing homage to a suit, to me, I'm not usually used to in a suit, but
I'm the defendant at the court.
Indeed. Well, thank you, everyone, for allowing me the time to just talk to you around the energy exchange and what I consider it to be. But the first thing I'd like to do before we start is I think we've all had so much food, and in my family, when you've had food, you tend to go to sleep pretty quickly, and I feel my voice will probably do that. So, can you turn to the next person sitting next to you? Face somebody, please. Oh, so much sugar. Okay. There you go. Now, if you look at the person next to you, can you lean in forwards? Please don't be too intimate. Next is, can you smile at them? A genuine smile from your belly. Interesting. The energy in this room was what? Wow. Immediately. It didn't need much. You didn't say much. You didn't talk. You didn't enact anything. It's just a case of leaning in, feeling slightly uncomfortable, but actually smiling for your belly, just being authentic. And that is what we are in health and social care. We are people that are authentically delivering kindness, love, assuring that people feel that they are an important, valued member of the community. That's what we do in health and social care. So I have come from listening to Mr. Eastwood, and I'm going to talk about quantum physics, which I know nothing about. But actually, interestingly, in health and social care, quantum physics is the one thing that is so relatable. It talks about the intangible. It talks about energy. It talks about how we relate to each other, how we co-relate as individuals. And in health and social care, when you look at us in terms of a care community, the caregiver is constantly giving out their energy to another person, be it a family member, be it a resident, be it a professional that's coming in, be it bloody CQC. Sorry, I swore. You know, all of that is them trying to assure that people feel reassured that they're in a space where they are loved and taken care of. Can somebody tell me what they feel is the common currency within care? What is our currency?
Love and kindness.
Perfect. Absolutely. Bullseye. Our currency is love and kindness. And that's the one thing that we get to spend every single day without even thinking about it. People wake up, nobody wakes up to do a bad job. We all wake up to do a good job. And we wake up, and when we get there, we're like, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm going to go and look after Betty. I'm going to make sure Claire is well. I need to make sure that Martin has had his drink because he likes that. But I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about what am I going to give you? So for me, it's important for us to understand the energy that sits within the care community itself, but within the care home, and more importantly, between the exchange between our colleagues and the person that they're looking after. Because they're both people. They're persons, right? They're humans. I think somebody said, is it client, is it resident, is it service user? They're just two human beings having an exchange of energy, which is intangible, invisible, but wants to make sure that one or the other is feeling valued, loved, and appreciated. Okay, next slide. So it was important for me to go all fancy on you and use Canva, which I've never used in my life, by the way. And I was trying to find the best way to kind of demonstrate the cyclical nature of staff, their well-being, and the resident outcomes. It's a circular motion. And sometimes it can go the other way as well, by the way, because actually the resident can make the staff feel much better about themselves. They feel valid, they feel important, they feel that they're making a difference. And then when it turns around, when it's clockwise, it probably is the staff member looking after the resident. So it's really important that we understand this relationship. By understanding that relationship, all the things that Neil's talked about, the drainage, which causes staff having burnout, all the stuff around why do people come and work in health and social care, and why do they stay in it, sits embodied in that. If we can all think like that, even when we're looking at tech solutions, we will, I can assure that we sustain what we have, and that is intrinsic in everything that we do. There's nothing like health and social care out there. Absolutely nothing. If you go in hotels, hey, I want you to make sure you give me a massage. That doesn't really matter. You're not really worried about my well-being. It's a transaction. It's not transactional where we are. And it's really about that lived experience, that shared lived experience. So for me, it's, I feel that by us appreciating that circular motion of exchange of energies, it helps us assure that we are doing our best to support our colleagues. Now, there's a couple of people that I want to talk about. There's Julie, she's Julie Burton, she's not here today. She has talked last time about all the stuff she does around well-being for her team. And the reason why I use her is she's just a typical example of somebody who's really invested in the well-being of her team to assure that they are there and they can be present and authentic and deliver great care. So there are examples that she would have shared today, but she can't be here today. But I just want to make sure that we relate to that and we remember that. So things like making sure people have had meals. Dimple, you talked about diet. I've taken that on, and hopefully I'm showing that I'm not a little bit away. You know, we talked about making sure that there's spaces where staff can decompress. We talked a little bit about the care home design. All of that is really important. Next slide, Dalia. Okay, so a question I want to ask from you is, where do you think there's leakage and drainage when it comes to staff well-being and their energy? Where do you think there's leakage and how does it happen? Yeah.
Sometimes we found staff, when they talk to each other, they drag themselves downwards together, so they jump out playing together almost. And which is good that people are being honest and openly talking about their feelings. But sometimes people can kind of cyclically drag a group of individuals down as it all kind of becomes a bit of a pile on. We've seen that in training with staff who, because I'm an outsider, they just hurl everything that they've been holding in at us, and it gets progressively worse if you don't kind of steer the conversation.
Very interesting. And actually, that's an energy thing. Because somebody's introduced a form of fiction, they've introduced negative energy, and it's so quick to latch onto negative aspects, isn't it? It's easier to hear the bad stuff about yourself than the good stuff. If I was to say to you, oh, Neil, you're really nicely dressed, you can be like, oh, yeah. But if I say, oh, Neil, oh, those socks, you'll be like, oh, babe.
Yeah.
So there is this thing about latching onto negative energy. And that sits within the sector in itself. Even the way we talk about ourselves. We're always talking about, oh, this bad thing happened, or this thing happened, but actually we never talk about the good stuff that we do. The stuff that our carers do every single day. They wake up, they get dressed, they leave their families, they leave home early in the morning, they arrive, they stay there all day, make sure everybody else is fed. Sometimes they don't even have a break, and then they go home, and they still have to go and look after their family. Nobody actually thinks about that. So it's really important that we create like moments where positivity can be explored and also examples of it, so that it is there to talk about. Tanjinda, you want to say something?
It was a case of touching on that point. It's infectious when, like you mentioned, if one person has a great day and a very positive start to their working week, other people you kind of pass that vibe on, I guess. And even if someone had a negative experience, all of a sudden it can sort of pass that down, sort of chain of reactions across other work staff. But I think also the staff members and the leadership team, supervisors, the care manager, what kind of energy and kind of mindset they work on, and how they respect or not maybe not so much respect their staff, will also have an impact on what that energy in the field reciprocates, I guess.
Absolutely.
And sorry, hands up, directors as well as managers. So
Absolutely.
the whole system.
There's a comment from Julie. There is leakage when we. I'll let you read it. Can you read it?
There is leakage when we do not see the people who come in every day. We as leaders are very quick to identify the problems, but do we really know the people who sit in the front of us every day and what they have already endured before they arrive at work?
Very true. Very, very true.
So if we're a product of the company we keep, which I think as human beings we tend to be, then one element is if you're around negative people all the time, you tend to get dragged into that, and there's no outcome. And conversely, if it's all positivity, that might be misconstrued that there's no problem. So the bit about negative or positive follows negative is the important reason. You should have an environment that's open for people to say, do you know what, there's an issue here, but not to leave it at that, and then to move on to, okay, what do we do about it?
Okay.
And then you, by definition, lifting yourself into a positive energy environment.
Absolutely, Martin. And you will see when we start talking about TIC solutions, how that can be embodied and how things like CarePoint 365 and other softwares out there are working with that and trying to embody that. I think, Claire, we talked earlier about your service, Sensio, and how it's beginning to think about the dashboard and how that dashboard actually informs the care workers, but at the same time provides information for operators, directors on what's actually happening and visibility.
Yeah, one of the things that we see all the time when we're talking about tech is, I love the people that support, I love people that live in our care home, but, and then it's all those other things that are part of their job that, the point is they don't come to like to do that bit.
Yeah.
That's like the unintended consequence of being a care worker is the note taking and the record keeping and the inspections and the meds monitoring and all of that. That isn't the bit that they get the energy from as well. They get their energy back from the person that they're supporting. All of the other things can become a real burden and increase that like stress and burnout. Like it's hardly ever the work they actually do caring that causes the stress and burnout. When we talk to people, it's usually all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all the other stuff that keeps the service safe and it's really important. Yeah. The way it's employed, which is the point you guys have just made, is what makes a big difference for people. Sure.
Yeah, I think there's this concept of masking, isn't there, for everybody. When they come to work, you have to put your troubles away, you have to forget about what's happened that night, and you have to show up with a smile on your face. That's known as masking. It's pretty exhausting. So I think it's giving staff, employees, the ability to decompress and to actually share what's going on, even if they're just putting on a brave face.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Also say that the ability for people to decompress is something that we use in first aid, for example. If you're having a good time, you share it with the people that are around you, everyone goes up. But if someone's had a terrible time, actually we have the ability to ring someone separately. And at that point, that person is talking to us and they're only listening to us. It's not a two-way conversation, which means that anything that has gone wrong, you can talk to those individuals because they are trained to take that information from you. And so, because what can happen very easily is where, the previous speaker where you said the intrinsic benefits, but then we talk about pay and reward and they think, but we love doing this, but you're still not valuing it because money is the way to weigh up both of those things. And I think that's what happens. So give people the correct tools to decompress so then it doesn't go anywhere else. It's where you have a debrief with someone, that's how you would do it if you've had to deal with something that's been quite traumatic. So
absolutely. I mean, everybody, you've talked about people, the unintended consequences of regulation, record keeping, because it's an emotive sector. Your people are allowing you to look after their loved ones. Therefore, they want some reassurance that you're doing it right. You've talked about making sure that people have the opportunity to be authentic, decompress. You've talked about being objective, about negative or positive. All those things, though, sit within energy. I keep going back to energy. There's a form of energy that sits with that. So when you're decompressing, you are allowing yourself to sift out all the negativity so that you can come back to yourself and be yourself and then go out again and give love, care, and support. Because remember, our current is love, our currency is kindness. So all the stuff that we're talking about is really important when you're talking around drainage. So, when I think about things that cause leakage, I think about unsustainable workloads, domiciliary care. Remember, we're talking just now. 15 minutes. It's time to make a cup of tea in 15 minutes. By the time I figured out where the tea bags are, it's already 10 minutes in. So that's unsustainable. Yes, they're changing it, but it's taking a long time to get there. You've got stress and burnout. And stress and burnout really, Neil, talks to what you're talking about, the constant trauma that we have in health and social care. Somebody going through an illness and then them recovering and then having another illness and then them recovering is trauma that sits within our energy as people. And we take it on and we don't think about it. It's unintentional. It's an unintentional consequence of us being in this job, but it drains our energy. It causes leakages. So what do we do as providers? As tech, creating software that allows that heat map to be provided to managers, directors, the health and social care space to make it better. Okay, and then the one bit that I thought I wanted to talk about really, really briefly, but we don't have anybody in the room, and I was expecting somebody in the room around this, is care home design. At the moment, our care homes are hotels, really. They don't really have space for Vivien to go and have a little bit of a sit down and think about themselves. So there's a bit around that where we need to start thinking intentionally about the spaces that we're creating and how those spaces allow staff to have a safe space where they can relax and be themselves. And sometimes it should be a space where nobody else can go into other than the staff, because once you start bringing in relatives, they contaminate the energy, because their energy is very emotive, it's very strong, it's very much, I'm angry, I'm guilty, what do I do? Why are you here? Why are you sitting down? Those conversations start happening, and those conversations contaminate the energy in that space. So always think about, from a quantum physics perspective, you don't see it, but it creates energy. It sits there. When you came in here, initially when we got in, it was nice and quiet, wasn't it? The moment people started coming in, the energy changed. When we started saying hello to each other, smiling at each other, the energy changed. There's so many subtle things that change the energy within our care homes. And in health and social care, it's emotive. We need to be thinking about that intentionally. The next slide. Thanks, Sally. Okay, so, Raj, I talk to you directly. As tech providers, you're so used to taking a lot of our data, extracting out of us, and never really giving us anything back. We would like it back, please. May you please, all the tech providers, may you think about giving us back, because we're giving you rich data about how, regulation can be responsive. Damien can tell me, oh, this is the right psychometric tool that can help you recruit the right person. Since you're telling me, oh, actually you need to be reactive to this man. We need to be thinking about how, when you harvest our data, you can give us back as caregivers. I demand that of you. Because if you do that, that way it becomes a reciprocal relationship. And actually, there will be an energy exchange with tech, which is important. One of the things that I've been talking about is I would love somebody to just create a battery icon that sits somewhere when somebody's delivered care, and for themselves, they can tell you what their battery is. Is their battery on low? Is it on 5%? Is it on 10%? Is it on 50%? Whatever. And then it creates a heat map for me as a manager, because I can look and say, oh, actually, unit 5, they're struggling a little bit. Unit 6, oh, they're doing okay. They don't really need me now. It's those little nuanced things that will help us align and assure that our colleagues have got the right support to maintain the energies. So I think technology should be a supportive tool. It should enhance communication and collaboration, because that's what it's about, right? At the end of the day, it's all about communication. That's what you should be doing. You should make sure our tasks are streamlined. I think I was having a conversation with you, Dean. I'm sick and tired of signing into so many different systems, and I'm just starting the day. That is 10 times I'm signing on to something. I just want one single sign-on that allows me to see everything. That harnesses all that data using AI, Scott, right? And that AI element tells me this, actually today, you're on unit so and so, you should be doing this. It helps preserve some of that energy that I need to be giving love and support. And I keep going back to that because that's what we do, isn't it? That's intrinsic in what we do. And then the other thing is, how do you monitor staff well-being? We had a conversation with earlier in terms of CQC saying, oh, can you demonstrate how people have been part of your vision making or your statement of purpose? How do they do that? Well, how do we do that? We couldn't figure it out, didn't we? We had a conversation, we didn't know how to do it because they're looking for surveys. Okay, I'll put something on a survey. I'll be tick, 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 I need to go. But actually, there was something that was real time that gave you a heat map. You can always use that every single time and say, well, actually, on the past 30 days of heat maps, we've figured out this area, and this is what we've done in response to it. And even when you're doing domiciliary care, where in particular you're going into services, where you're going to people's houses, where you actually sometimes don't know the landscape, right? And you're quite scared, and people are themselves, they've got their own energy that you're meeting that might be negative. You're able to give that feedback real time and it gives information and data and a way of supporting the people that are supporting you. So for me, it's really about how do we enable real-time information around staff well-being. Okay, so I would like to table a conversation around what examples can you give of tech-enabled or non-tech ways. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be tech-based, but I'd really like you to be able to check because we are in Caretaker Avengers, by the way. You just saw it in that. Of protecting, enhancing, or celebrating care worker energy. Are we going to do it on the tables? Neil and I are going to be like Louis and then like school. What is your primary school teacher and walk around?
Teacher, I hated it. I tried to was like, why have I done this? Yes, going around the table.
Going around the tables.
On task.
Yes. Please, can somebody nominate themselves? We don't want to be saying who's going to feedback. Somebody will feedback to us. And then Neil will sum it all up for us, as he does very well, considering he wrote a book. And then we'll be able to write all those points.
Yeah, thank you, finally.
And so that we can all then assure that we take all the points you've raised and we can distribute them to the team. I really hope I've given you an idea around energy and the quantum element of it. It's a much, I think Anushka and I have talked about it's a conversation that's just starting. But I think because it is the golden thread within the care space, we need to assure that we're safeguarding it as much as possible. Over to you. Please answer the question. We'll be walking around and discussing.
We can do 15 minutes, are we?
15 minutes, yes.
That's still West Noosh. Is that still okay?
15 minutes.
We ended, I'll go from where we ended, it was about, we talked about personalised care with technology for individuals and rural care support. It's about personalised, what makes individual, what rewards do people want. We talked about Julie from Xavier Court, who presented last time, about she had for rewarding people, for example, if they needed school uniform when they were flagging the end of the summer, or they had a system whereby they could food that was going on today they could share. We can individualise what makes a person tick if they want to have some credits for a class they want to do or something like that. So if we can use technology to personalise what individual makes individuals tick, that was one thing we came out with. There's lots more in that.
I think what you said is also well-being is unique for every different organisation because you have a unique set of people who have different home lives, who have different professional attributes. And so to be able to understand what makes your team work, tick and recharge, refuel, you've got to identify that. And tech can play an important role in that. But also, I think what we were saying is there's also other ways of identifying that. And one of the most simplest ways that we don't often think about is just simple conversations. Yes. And that weak link between what Leon was saying, between management and the workforce, is trying to bridge that gap. That there are conversations happening, and then you can take the more complex. I understand that first, really important.
Lovely. I remember something you said earlier to me. You said, when you get into, I think you said when you get into a room, was it you or somebody else? When you get into a room, you immediately feel the energy of what's going on because you remember having that conversation, and that's really pertinent, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the conversation probably will give you a feel of what's going on.
Yeah.
Sometimes rather than the data that's in the
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I think when we spoke about what we're trying to do, two things, I think. One was that a lot of the software that we have, certainly in the care industry, is very focused on telling care workers what to do, tracking care workers. It's all very managerial focused metrics. The thing we don't do is actually ask care workers how they feel, what they did, how did the shift go. Things like pulse surveys, anonymous surveys, collecting information from care workers on how their work experience is going, actually is really important, something that's missed, because that will highlight intrinsic problems, it will give you information on things that are going well, things that maybe not going well. If you structure the questions you ask care workers, you can actually focus on areas that need improvement. So if your organisation has to improve in an area, it's probably the staff who are being shopping will be able to give you that. So I think that was a very sort of strong feeling that we had in some discussion around the sort of not and fear of giving back feedback. If you know that feedback is anonymous, you're more willing to do it. I think the other good recommendation for care workers, a copy of your book. Well, sorry.
I'm right behind you tonight. Yeah, tomorrow.
So Jim, we have the digital sessions, which I'm sort of where the team coming in can add how they're feeling after the shift, and then that is immediately picked up. So anything other than a smiley face is then picked up by the manager, and we explore that with that individual team member. Find out what went wrong during that shift, what went right, and move on from that. Other non-techie things that we do, for example, Ramadan, we make sure that the team come in a bit early, like 5, and they give them food. And then the chef will cook hot milk for them when the sun goes down at night. And we make plenty of rest drinks for them, ice creams, ice lollies, T-shirts in the hot weather, stuff like that. So it's a mix, but you're also doing some stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, so it kind of came up a comment around utilising staff feedback. So one thing we found was that we had an employee of the month, but a lot of the staff didn't want that. They felt that all of them were doing a great job and delivering great outcomes for people. But instead now we have a monthly, and they come into the hub if they want to, but it's optional. But they all write something nice if they want to about a colleague. That's something that's got well in the last month, whether it's health, either work or personal. A lot of those comments are on the wall in our office. They're visual. As soon as you come into the office, you can kind of see them. And he said, actually, if you haven't done that, you can just kind of go and see what's happening. So new starters is great in terms of these teams joining, for one another. But I also spoke about that it's okay to come off the tech. So like for my direct report, I don't do supervision of using our platform or paper. I think so where do you want to go? Don't go to the park and go through the parks and it's subway or food oriented. That conversation, it doesn't have to be work, it can be about any work issues. So we were saying, we have an agreement that none of them are documented. So that's what happened with CQC come in, because they're not documented as reference matches, but they have that when they want it. It doesn't have to be monthly, they can have it, if they want to have it once for 6 months, it's treated by them. It's not a big problem from my policy point of view, but it's what we're taking.
It's just the human. So it's about humanity, you're celebrating humanity rather than ticking a box, which is sitting in regulation.
I think it's us getting to manage the managers everybody. So quite often it's nothing that who's what they want to discuss. It's really to do with their daughter, bullying at school, things going on is more than what they're there to do, which is obviously the work side of it.
Amazing.
And I want to give a big challenge to the 365 people here. Because you mentioned IT systems that are very dedicated to the management point of view, but I'm not sure that that's the case. If you have a proper system that covers everything from HR to operations, you can fish around some underlying currents before they actually materialize. So I think the current systems are not good enough, but if you have a proper system that covers the whole, you'll be able to get much better information. Much more sensitive information. So that's a challenge for you, but I think it's possible. I think it's definitely something to look up to in the future.
It's about intuitive systems. System
that you pick up. Obviously, you need to look for what to look for. But if you're looking for certain noises in a system that covers everything from HR to operations to compliance, you'll be able to pick up much more noises. Basically almost automatically with the clever systems. So it's yet to happen, it's yet to come.
It's come.
But it sounded good.
And then it's intuitive because it's human feedback and only technology feedback, and it's just such an easy thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember Marilyn was sitting there quietly one day saying to me, Vivian, you need systems that harvest the emotions of colleagues, because most of them are going through burnout, they are emotionally distressed, they are struggling to articulate what they're feeling, because she has free workshops for registered managers to feed into and have conversations around how their week has been, and it's on a weekly basis. And it's interesting how she picks up that there is a level of distress, which is another undercurrent. That since Vivian has said, imagine distress is an energy depleter. It's not even a drainer, it's a depleter. So, you know, there's a lot of work around capturing this information. And I guess 10.365, we've got a lot of work to do. Thank you. Right. This table?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of, we went down a few rabbit holes, but a lot of common themes. Started with ensuring that the care staff are bought in to the tech they've got to use and not just throwing it at them.
Yeah.
Martin, you spoke quite a lot about the contextual side of why tech is being used.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the managerial reporting, but there's more to it. It's actually going to help you do your job better and help you serve and do what you came here to do, as opposed to just filling in tick boxes. So there was a lot of talk about that. There was talk about treating carers as grown-ups and not children, quite that comment. You know, you're asking them to do more with less often. And tech can cause stress if not delivered correctly. And then I think the other element is we talked about supervisions and appraisals. I know Anushka's doing quite a lot of work with our team internally on finding out what makes them tick, our staff tick. She calls it sort of the honey, what makes them do what they want to do, and then how do we use that in the performance and appraisal process to find out whether they're meeting their own career goals and their life goals. And I haven't ever seen that in a supervision or appraisal format from any care provider. So if we don't know why that carer is coming to work and what it is that's making them happy, how can we measure that they're happy with a simple mind phase, sad face?
Very true.
You know,
Very
so
true.
I think that's the other thing.
That's interesting, actually, because often supervision appraisals are weaponized.
Yeah.
And I'm the first person to agree with that. They're weaponized in such a way that the carers themselves don't come and are authentic, asking you, treat me like an adult. I want you to be flexible with my rota. I want to be able to give you a sad face 10 days in a row because I've got my period or I've got menopause like me and I've got brain fog and I just don't know what's going on, you know. So there's so much that sits within that needs to be unpacked around the processes that sit within health and social care, which often have been led by other industries that do not understand, I go back, the intrinsic current that sits within us, which is love and compassion.
Well, you see, as an employer, you've got immense power to help somebody achieve their personal goals. If they are personal goals, but often the employer doesn't even know what their personal goals are. But if you don't know what their personal goals are, how are you going to help them?
We did touch on the link between why somebody would come to work, and a lot about that is the energy that's generated by doing something amazing to the person you support. Because that's the ultimate, all roads lead to that. But the other thing is quite interesting, I've just been hearing around the room, is that quite a lot of the examples are actually non-tech. We shouldn't forget this is a people business. Fantastic local leadership that's genuinely aligned with values of the organisation. Funny enough, good things are going to happen. Although tech has its part to play. Bit of a partnership.
Absolutely.
There might be some stuff in these virtual rooms as well.
Okay. Monthly Energy Champion Awards or shout outs in team meetings. These can be weekly or daily, just acknowledging creating positive energy. I think that's fantastic. Anything else?
There's more, there were loads. Self-assessment surveys.
Self-assessment surveys that are let the manager when staff are feeling at risk of burnout, allowing them to step in and test the temperature of the day ahead. Feeling supported, enhanced emotional energy. So allow time for those one-to-one meetings to talk, which is what Mark was talking about just now. Look at rotational roles, authentic personal acknowledgement. I like that. Smart rostering, take provision of sufficient stations,
or handheld that enable documentation for the completed at point of delivery and reducing long periods of time sitting in front of the computer. Okay, thank you for that. There's only one thing that I'm going to mention around particularly tech provision and sufficient stations. There's been a lot of misunderstanding from care workers around ambient monitoring, which probably would take care of the recording element. And that's because I think the conversation around it does not talk about how it enables somebody to have time to do other things that are actually relational with the person. So it's something for us to think about. So Neil, are you ready, or do you just want me to surmise?
Oh, you're going to do it yourself?
No. I'm going to hand over to you because I don't have the book.
Well, the first point I'd like to make is so yeah, it's been fascinating actually, and to try and pull this all together. I think I'll just give you a summary before this looks like some drinks are arriving, the perfect timing. I think the first learning, and we saw this from the online as well, is we need an awareness as providers of this issue. We're living in a 2D world, and there's a whole 3D world of love and the reason why people come to work. And awareness is the first step to understand. I think we got that. And appreciation of the whole person, talking about each individual and the story and why they're caring. We're all in the sector here. Why did we come into the sector, and what's our story? What's the driver for us? And I think looking at tech, then tech can directly support, which I think is exciting. We heard some examples there. I mean, you might choose the mood check software that we heard about, something that's specifically helping either monitor or support or strengthen energy in some way. But there's also a lot of tech that can improve the quality of the job by taking away admin and paperwork and increasing the contact time that there is available as well. I mean, an example of that might be something like Sensio, where it provides information. It just means that the quality of the residents' life is better, and the staff feel better about that. I think we really need to concentrate as tech providers, I'm one of those, about giving people and care providers the why instead of look at all the features. And I've certainly been guilty of that. And if we move outside the tech world, I think it's an understanding that tech has an important role to play, but there's lots more to it, and it's a people business. And then someone mentioned on this table about random acts of kindness, and in fact, that's what's happening all the time, is the kindness, and how can we celebrate that? I remember going into a care home, and there was a huge tree that had been drawn on the wall, and each leaf had some story on it about kindness. And it was just a wonderful thing that as you walked in every day, you saw. So there are some non-tech solutions. I'm quite good at drawing trees. So if that's something you'd want me to help you with. And all of this, of course, coming back to where we started our journey with Louis, it actually all feeds into what CQC should be looking for, which is this a wonderful environment full of kindness and joy and love? And that's really where they need to be focusing. And my fear sometimes is CQC of making a compliance culture where you shouldn't do this, you did that wrong, you did this wrong. What about celebrating the love and all the wonderful things that are happening? So I think, and that brings us back to perhaps where we started, which is it's so important that we never forget that this is about caring about people and not just caring for them. And the workforce is critical to that, and we should celebrate all of those, the joy and the love that they bring, and everything we can do, tech or not, we're going to get into a much better place if we are all aware of that. So yeah, quick summary there. I guess.
Thank you very much.